Welcome to the Sustainable Region. I'm Dagmar Timmer. Today we're broadcasting a dialogue from Metro Vancouver's Future of the Region Sustainability Dialogue series. This session features 5 presentations on strengthening the regional food network in a global economy. The program is also available online at metrovancouver.org.
My name is Peter Holt, and I'm your moderator for this dialogue. Today's topic, strengthening the regional food network in a global economy, will explore the economics of regional food networks and what it takes to create a local supply chain linkages that are robust, resilient, and can thrive amidst the global economy. We have 5 distinguished panelists with us today. Eric Azadorian is a senior researcher with the World Watch Institute and the director for the State of the World report. And that report is transforming cultures from consumerism to sustainability. Eric.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Metro Vancouver and Peter, for having me here. And I will admit, I do not know much about Vancouver, so I hope what I can bring today is a bit of global perspective on how that could be applied to creating a regional food economy here in Vancouver. And I want to make it clear that from my perspective, this process is not an economic process. This is a cultural transformation. Consumerism is the dominant pattern that shapes our culture, our understandings of ourselves, and that's been intentionally engineered over the past arguably 50 to 200 years. And that has been done highly effectively until it has changed how we live. But we can use those same tools to create a culture of sustainability that were so effective in creating a culture of consumerism. And that is how the structure of the State of the World is really mapped out. It looks at 6 key institutions on how to change cultures, transform cultures, so that living sustainably feels as natural as living as a consumer feels today. How do we make that shift? And it looks at these key 6 institutions: education and business, media and government, social movements, and traditions. The exciting part for me of what's come out of this research is basically a new system or methodology to apply to any specific issue. Education is a great example. In the book, there's a whole article on school meals and the power of shifting these school menus in creating new dietary norms so that a whole new generation of children start eating local, healthy, sustainable food instead of growing up on fast food, on sugary and processed foods that are often in our schools. The media, we have to recognize the power of marketing. Marketing is a $643 billion a year industry. It's literally 1% of the world's gross world product. So, finding the ways to use social marketing is a key tool in helping to stimulate desire. 2 more examples quickly. The government, of course, it could be a powerful tool. On the bus up here, I saw that there's a question in Vancouver of incinerator or new landfill. A question of how do we create composting opportunities here, supported by governments to create new local fertilizers that actually help to improve local farming and get rid of waste in the most sustainable way, composting organic waste and getting that directly back into the full cycle. And one last one in my 15 seconds is that the one that we often ignore, the traditions, right? When you get actually church communities and elders and others that have soft power in a sense, advocating for this. If you get local priests and rabbis building local church gardens and celebrating that and encouraging people to buy their food from those outlets, that's a real powerful tool. But the report really goes into lots of different ways that we can apply different institutions that we often overlook in this process. And so I'll end there and hope to give more examples in the Q&A. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Eric. Next to speak is Brent Warner, coordinator of the Canadian Agri-Tourism Working Group and former executive director of Farmers Markets Canada. Brent. I did, yeah.
Sorry about the title. It was a bit of a mouthful there. 5 minutes is like the toughest time for me to speak. I could give you an hour, but 5 minutes is going to be hard here. So following up on what Eric said, I've spent my whole life working at the farm level. So I'm not a policy guy. I'm a dirty hands guy with farmers my entire life. And the people that I worked with all my life, the current system of agriculture is basically broken for them. We created a system of agriculture after the Second World War where we made food cheap. North America has the cheapest food in the world. Per capita, we spend less than any country in the world on our food. And I put the United States and Canada together because it depends on whose statistics you're reading on any given day. That has to change. We hear about food prices being too high. That's not a farmer's reality. That may be your reality at a purchase point, but it's not a farmer's reality. Did you know that last weekend there was a protest at Vernon? The apple farmers brought their apples to the Vernon Farmers Market and sold them for what they got from the packing house this year. And that was 12 cents a pound. Have you seen apples in the store recently under $1.50 a pound? Probably not very often. So that's the farm reality. Blueberry pricing last year, 2 years ago, blueberries were selling for processed price somewhere in the area of $3 a pound. They're under 30 cents a pound returned to the farmer now and expected to drop considerably farther because of the world oversupply in blueberries. So we have a problem in the farm community. The retail prices that you pay at the major retail chains do not reflect the prices returned to the farmer. So if that is the only system we have to have a different system. And obviously we're not all going to shop somewhere else. Retail is here to stay. We need alternatives. I've spent the last 2 years of my life working with farmers markets. We did a major study in Canada last year of the economic impact of farmers markets in this country. It's over $1 billion in direct cash sales go through farmers markets in this country. The federal government has never done a study on farmers markets. They have never spent any money of any significant amount on that channel for selling local food, and I think it's a hugely important one. A couple more examples. The city of Halifax is going to open an indoor farmers market this summer. They spent $17 million on it. It is going to be the world's leading LEED certified farmers market, wind power, solar power, et cetera, and it will run year round. And yet here we are on the West Coast and we don't have that type of facility. Courtney Comox is very close to signing a deal with the city to put in indoor farmers markets there as well. Did you know the largest food retailer in the city of Calgary, the largest food retailer, and when people hear this, they have a hard time believing it, is the Calgary Farmers Market. It grossed over $35 million last year. That is an example of what we can do with a farmers market that also has processing facilities and is open year-round. So when people tell you that farmers markets aren't about real business, they're incorrect. What other things can we do? I want to follow up on what Eric said very quickly. I mean, governments in this country have neglected our local food system forever, since the Second World War. Yes, we have a fantastic commodity system. Yes, we have some farmers in this country that are doing very well, and good for them. Good for the dairy industry and the chicken industry. We actually have some sustainable agriculture out there. But we do not have that in most of our fruits and vegetables. This province used to have a Buy BC program, and the government disbanded it. I think it was 10 or 15 years ahead of the curve, and it should still be there. We have to tell consumers where and what local product looks like because, frankly, they don't have a clue, by and large. We did some amazing things in this province, and again, ahead of the curve. The BC School Fruit and Vegetable Snack Program, when Eric talked about school lunch programs in the United States, they actually have a school lunch program across the United States where they actually feed kids. It's an amazing story that they think we're sort of the left-leaning country above them and they feed their kids at school. We created a school fruit and vegetable snack program here, which is running in our schools. We also created a farmers market nutrition coupon program, both funded by the provincial government. The nutrition coupon program was not refunded this year. That's something all of you should be aware of. The low-income people are not getting their coupons to go to our farmers market anymore. The other major issue in this province right now is meat production. If you want to talk about regional food systems, you cannot escape the fact that we are in the process of getting rid of all of our small-scale abattoirs. And that is a definite impact on our food system. And I think I will just leave it there. I have about 10 seconds left, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brent. We now have Alan Langdon, the Western Canada Vice President for the Canadian Council of Grocery Distributors. Alan directs the Association's National Environment portfolio with a particular emphasis on product stewardship, packaging, climate change and organic waste. Alan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to thank Peter and Metro Vancouver for having me here to speak. And I think from my perspective, retailers have not participated in these discussions enough in the past few years. And I've been participating in these discussions in many levels in Metro Vancouver, provincial government over the last few months, and it's something I'd like to continue. In terms of CCGD and who our members are, we represent mainly the large-scale retail firms as well as the food service distributors. So approximately across the country, our members sell annually about $121 billion in retail sales, about 40 of that coming from the food service distribution sector. Across the country, we employ about 428,000 Canadians in more than 12,000 communities. And in BC, our sales are about $10 billion annually, and we employ about 65,000 British Columbians. And I found that the discussion so far, there's actually a lot of points that we'll agree on, but I wanted to touch on a couple things about our industry. One is it's probably one of the most competitive industries in the world. The after-tax profit for a grocery retailer in a good year is 2%. An okay year is 1.5%, and in a bad year, they can have less than 1% after-tax profit. And competition's only increasing. We're seeing a huge entrance into the market from general merchandisers, particularly if I look at Shoppers Drug Mart. If you see the huge growth in their pantry over the last year, that's having an impact on our members, and it's something. So you have to remember that the retail industry is incredibly competitive, and you know I like the one person who said the retail's here to stay. That's my hope, but you know you have to always be conscious. It's very competitive. In terms of local buying, our members are interested in buying more local products, full stop. You know, I think there's two overriding criteria for our members. One is quality and the second is quantity. We have to have both to be able to, you know, to ensure that we've got the product on a consistent basis. And certainly the big drive towards local buying or local purchases right now is consumer demand, but I would submit that there's a certain limit to it now and that some additional partners need to come to the table to help consumers understand the benefits of local produce. Part of that we're seeing in food service where you see the 100-mile diet has had a huge impact on our food service industry where they supply a lot of the restaurants. So a lot of those restaurants, as they move to the 100-mile diet, our food service distributors are changing the way they operate to make sure they can supply restaurants. But if I get back down to what's driving consumer demand or what drives consumer decisions, I think everyone has to understand, and someone's already submitted that, you know, we pay among the lowest prices in the world for food, and that's true. But if I look at the price, the factors influencing consumer decision, the number one factor is still price. And if you look at any of the advertising these days, if it doesn't talk about price, savings, saving money, it's just not competitive in the market. And so I think we have to realize that that's still a factor. And if we're going to have more local purchasing, there's going to need to be some work by a number of stakeholders to convince consumers to pay more for their food. The other thing that I think is an issue is also convenience. Convenience is a top consideration for time-strapped consumers. There's less time to shop, less time to cook, and consumers are interested in looking for meal solutions. You know, we just looked at an average cooking time comparison. In 1934, the average household took 2.5 hours to prepare a meal. Today, it's 8 minutes. In terms of obstacles to more local buying, from our perspective, again, price. You know, we need to work with other partners to convince consumers that they're interested to pay more for local produce. Consumer interest and demand. There's sometimes a consideration that, you know, that the supply of local produce outstrips demand, and I've heard opposite from some of our retailers where they're having difficulty moving local produce. And so there's obviously a gap in understanding. And it may be through price, it may be other factors, but there's also some work that needs to be done with consumers. We think there should be support from government for local food. We think they can help in working with industry, and we'd certainly be a partner in terms of educating consumers about the importance of local food and encouraging them to come to their grocery store and buy more local food. And certainly, you know, if we're going to have that, if we're going to work to convince consumers to buy more local food, well, we need to help in terms of increasing local food production. And just to build on the composting, we would completely agree. If we could have more composting infrastructure, I think it's got untold benefits across the country. Last 2 points from our position as industry, we're willing to partner with government and would be willing to partner with other stakeholders to address some of these issues. And particularly in BC, we're looking at taking a leadership role and working with those stakeholders to try and find some solutions to these problems, maybe not in the short term, but certainly over the long term.
Thank you, Alan. Next is Mark Holland, a co-founder and principal of HB Lanark Consultants Limited. Mark is a LEED accredited planner, and for those who don't know, LEED is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And he's also a landscape architect. His current consulting work includes introducing local governments to comprehensive sustainable food system agendas, and he has co-authored a book entitled Agricultural Urbanism, a handbook on planning food systems in cities that is being launched at the end of this month. Mark.
As per the introduction, I am a city planner. While I grew up on a farm, I'm not an agriculturalist. So it's great to be part of a discussion here that's beginning to put cities and food together. I apologize on behalf of my profession. We ignored food. Following World War II, after we grew a good deal of what we ate in our front yards, we stopped it altogether. Now, any of you who've picked a field of rocks probably know why. But the story here is that we walked away, and the global industry replaced our current system that we had at that time of food in and around our cities and in our cities with postponing it and pushing it away to somewhere else. And today we're part of an interesting movement together, all of us, in bringing it back to our cities. But we're not going to be able to go back to what we used to do because Pandora's box is open, our cities are what they are, and we have a thing called Costco. So it's a whole new world now, and what our challenge is to figure out how to do that. One of the first things we've discovered as city planners and how to begin to put these together, and city planners have to have urbanisms. Everything is an urbanism. It's a new urbanism. It's a this urbanism. So we've called ours agricultural urbanism. The premise is to actually, from a city point of view, because agriculture is what it is today, and it struggles to meet with the complexity and intensity of cities as a land use, but it's also a massive opportunity if we shift the consciousness from agriculture to food. And so we found our work shifting the agenda from simply growing produce and animals to actually moving to the entire integrated value-added food system. And if we look at it from a sustainability point of view, we find that a significant majority of the emissions and other issues that relate to our sustainability come post-field. And so this is a very exciting process to shift to that and to start to then look at the food system, which includes production, which is agriculture, whether that's in a city or outside on the edge of a city or somewhere else, as well as processing, distribution, retail, wholesale, the whole restaurant and food service and institutional procurement industry, education, food security, the celebration events and culture of food. All of those now become, each one is its own sort of economy, each one is its own culture. And they all begin to now fit into every aspect of a city, which includes land use patterns, buildings, transportation, open space, waste management, energy, water management systems, the whole socio-cultural component of things, as well as the economy. And you've heard from a few people who are dealing with the economic systems here. When we dive inside of what actually is going to cause change or make something happen, we discovered that it was actually people. So the question around production had a whole lot more to do with farmers. It had something to do with land, but without farmers, you can have land and you'll grow horses on it for somebody's pleasure. It's a very different kind of dynamic. The same thing with chefs, the same thing with local producers. And wherever you see actually interesting progressive agendas in a city dealing with food, you will find at its heart a very intriguing, intellectual, powerful, hardworking person. And one of the intriguing things around sustainable food cities is this whole culture of leadership and championship, which has to develop around that. One of the other exciting things that we're watching emerge here, and Vancouver is actually leading the way in this in some ways, as well as Halifax, as was mentioned, is the intriguing opportunity to develop food hubs. In a city where energy begins to happen, what you have to draw is retail, wholesale, manufacturing, experiential, urban design, infrastructure, event uses, all around a certain theme or a certain energy in one place. And when you do that, you get something extremely special that causes a whole new culture to emerge. Vancouver's been working with Local Food First, great group that have developed a whole concept for a food hub here in Vancouver. There are other ideas that are all across the world, but we can develop food hubs that aren't just urban, that are, say, edge urban, where we allow the farmers to collapse the vertical value chain into their own activities and begin to bring that to the edge of a city, where the presence of a city actually benefits the agricultural and urban system, the urban food system, rather than be seen as the Antichrist, as the fundamental antithesis of all things field. In the reality of where Vancouver is going to go, particularly Metro here in the next 40 years, we will essentially have twice as many people. We're going to need not only twice as much food, probably 4 times as much food, and we're going to need a whole lot of other things as well as the economic and industrial land. And we're going to have to figure out how to put all of that together and stack it all on top of each other. And that's going to be a new frontier that's quite different than other things that we've had to deal with in the past. So in terms of making it happen, we will be working uphill against supply and demand systems. This is a bit of an area of both market and government failure today. But if we start working toward a vision over 40 years, we can have one of the most impressive and most intriguing and exciting urban, sustainable regional food systems by 2050 of any metro region in the world. We may actually be forced to do it. So the story here is to shift our consciousness when we think from a city point of view to food away from purely agriculture, and become very open-minded and exploratory and excited about developing the complexity of cities and the complexity of food systems together, because we believe that no matter where you travel in time or history or place right now, every great city is also a great food city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Finally, we have agrologist, resource economist and journalist Wendy Holm. Wendy has provided policy advice to public and private sector clients in areas ranging from agriculture and regulation to competition policy and international cooperation. Under the auspices of the Canada-Cuba Farmers Farmer to Farmer project, Wendy has worked with farm communities in both countries to help build capacity and cooperation in support of sustainable farming practices. Wendy.
Thank you, and thank you to Metro Vancouver for organizing these amazing dialogues. They've been doing this for a number of years now, and I think credit is due to them, and to you for coming out, because you indicate how important it is. So the question is, how do we get the system to function? How do we look at the supply chain from the beginning to the end and make it work for our communities? We have to, first of all, make sure that the components in the primary sector are healthy. Land, obviously, top of mind for everyone. We have an ALR to provide food security to the province. We're growing. If we can get it right with our high mountains and our little skinny bits of land, if we can get it right here, just think of how easy it's going to be to get it right in other places. We need to put our houses on the hillsides, not on the farmland. We need to amalgamate farm parcels. We need to say no to individual withdrawal applications from the Agricultural Land Reserve. Just a hard-edged no. We're not going to accept individual applications for agricultural land withdrawal. We need to look at ways to provide leasing opportunities for young farmers. And we're allowed to disagree a little bit, right? We have to look at some of the wonderful pictures being painted by some of the new concepts around the new urbanism, and understand that the housing portion has to go on our hillsides, and the farming portion has to remain in farming. We can't take land out of the land reserve to grow houses just to have some trade-off of some market gardens and some farmers markets for privileged people who live in those communities. We have to look at young farmers and creating the opportunity for young farmers to do their apprenticing and getting into agriculture, people who don't grow up on a farm but need to know in a setting of training and apprenticing how to start a tractor, how to fix a pump, how to unclog an irrigation ditch. We need to look at issues of economics and understand that all the benefits that local agriculture puts on the table, things that we economists call positive externalities, have to be rewarded in somehow, because it's not all going to come from the market. We have to look at the enormous load of farm debt that's being carried by farmers and understand that respect for agriculture is part of the answer that we need to get to. We have to understand the components in the system. There's urban agriculture. There's intensive small-scale agriculture, there's peri-urban agriculture, and there's rural agriculture. And we can't be fighting with one another on concepts. We have to understand that each one is connected integrally to the other, and that part of the benefits of urban agriculture is making urban consumers understand that food is important, like education, like health, like other sectors of our society that we have to give better directions to politicians. When we get to the post-farm gate level, we don't have a lot of competition in the market. We have very concentrated distributors. We have concentrated retailers. It's hard to get products into those chains. It's hard to get products to the HRI market because of scale issues and availability issues. Maybe we need to look at a few more cooperatives in that sector. Maybe we should look at the Northern Italy model of cooperatives in the food sector and say, well, if the big guys aren't going to understand and play the game, then we need to create some of that infrastructure ourselves. And we have to look at issues like consumption. If consumers were to make a diligent effort to say, where is the local product? I'm not going to eat lettuce in the wintertime. Where was that made? Where was that produced? Where did this come from? Where did you get this? To the retailers, that would start to make a big change. The issues of food security, food sustainability, food safety, I think these are top of mind with consumers, and while the statement was made by Alan that we have to convince consumers to pay more for food, and food is the critical pricing point, I think that we have to understand what the cost of cheap food is, the cost of a cheap food policy, and we have to convince politicians to do more to ensure the food security and sustainability of our communities.
That was Strengthening the Regional Food Network, one of a series of dialogues presented by Metro Vancouver. This event also featured a question and answer session, which will be broadcast next week on the Sustainable Region, or you can download it from Metro Vancouver's website. Email us your comments regarding this topic at sustainableregion@metrovancouver.org or call 604-436-6794. Thanks for watching The Sustainable Region. I'm Dagmar Timmer. See you next time.